What's going on, everybody? We're back and we're hopping into episode 20, which is what's up, Jake? Sorry, my dog's underneath me. Which is gonna be a solo episode. In this episode, what I want to do is I want to go through some of the things that I've learned over the course of 2024. For those of you that don't know, 2024 was probably the hardest year of my life, if I'm gonna be completely honest. I went through the loss of my grandmother. I went through the inevitable loss of my aunt, both of whom I was very, very close with. And I fell out of love with the sport of powerlifting, a sport that's given me so much over the past couple years. And in doing so, I found myself lost. I found myself in a very tough situation where I wasn't adherent responding to clients well. I wasn't adherent in updating programs. I lost touch with the work ethic that I had worked so hard to have, the person that I wanted to become, and the person that I wanted to obviously help others become as well. And in this episode, what I want to do is I just want to talk a little bit about how I kind of flipped the script on that. I made a post a little bit over a month ago now, I think, where I talked about how, I sat down with my wife or my fiance, sorry, my soon to be wife, Paulina, and I told her about, you know, over the past week, felt like I matured 10 years in 10 days. And it was eye opening. I think that, sorry guys, I've got some allergies. I think that being in that situation over 2024 gave me a massive shift in perspective. I guess that's the first lesson is learning how to shift your perspective, learning how to look at the situations you're in a different light. And in that post, what I talked about was not being necessarily mad at things that would normally make me mad or sad at things that would normally make me sad. For example, the first slide of it is, me sitting down on a belt squat, after a really, really hard set. And I talk about how privileged I am, how eternally grateful I am to be in that position because there's a lot of people who don't have the opportunity or the means to push themselves in a sport or find a sport that they love. And so I feel incredibly privileged to be able to feel fatigued after a set of belt squats. Normally something that you would not look forward to. I feel privileged to be in that position. As you go through that post, you'll also see, a picture of a setup that I have very normally, which is, two monitors and, some scientific articles or papers on one of them and a bunch of notes on the other. And I took a picture of that as how privileged I am to pursue a career that I love and pursue a research or pursue research and being able to push the field forward instead of thinking of it as, oh man, I have to read, I have to take notes, I have to go to class, I have to go to a lab meeting. Now I'm able to look at this in a perspective of I get to and how privileged I am to be able to do that. I know there's plenty of unemployed Americans across the US that would, give their limb to be able to have a job, a stable job, something that I take for granted so often. And so that first lesson in my mind is simply just being able to shift your perspective, being able to set yourself up in a way where you don't get lost in the day to day. You look at things from a macro lens. If you guys are regular listeners of this podcast, you'll understand that Dev and I, one of my really good friends, Dev and I, we both talk about the macro very, very, very often in training. I think talking about the macro in life is extremely important too. Macro meaning the long term block. In powerlifting, we think of macro cycles as being, 3 or 4 blocks that are put together. In life, you can think of macro cycles being that big push towards what right now is leading to my comprehensive exams. This past year, these past couple months, it's been a macro of being able to take my comprehensive exams. It could be getting through a busy season as an accountant. It could be, shifting or moving forward to 30 or 40 clients that, maybe was a goal of yours starting at 20 as an online coach. And so being able to shift your perspective and understanding that we don't just have to do things, we get to do things, and how privileged we are to be able to be in those situations. The second one is one that actually made me kind of record this episode this morning. And it's that perfect gets in the way of good enough. I want to say that again. Perfect gets in the way of good enough. Now, I have always been in the mindset that everything needs to be kind of set up in a very particular way for me to make content, for me to sit down and study, for me to write training. I need, my glass of water and a clean desk and, really, really good motivation and all of these different things. When in reality, I'm trying to, basically set myself up for perfect when if I could just sit down and crank out maybe a third of a block, two-thirds of a block during a break at school, or be able to read half of a paper, or just the method section of a paper, as I've got 10 or 15 minutes here and there, I'm gonna still be making progress towards my goals. That kind of good enough is definitely better than me procrastinating on it, which is definitely what I'm doing when I'm trying to set up a perfect situation. It's me procrastinating on what the actual end goal is, and it's getting in the way of me actually reaching my goals. It's getting in the way of me actually being able to achieve things and get places and, you know, strive for the greatness that I know that I can be. And I want to bring up in doing this little black book. And if you're watching the videos, and you're a friend of mine, you've probably seen me carry around this little black book for around maybe 2 to 3 years now. And what this is it is a to-do list. And the way that I set my to-do list out and the way that I've been doing it for, 2, 3, maybe even 4 years now is I actually write two of them per day. This is an idea that I got from a YouTube channel called S Truthless. I'll link the video that describes this method in the description. And in this method, what you do is you write down on one side. So in the video, you can see one side is shorter than the other side. You write down on one side everything that you need to get done to not incur stress on the next day. So, for example, if we look at a couple days ago, I wrote down that I needed to, call about some shirts that I'm having made, read a paper, write training. I need to go train, post a reel, work on figures for a paper or a manuscript that we're trying to get published, and then edit some questions that I was working on for an exam. Now, that seems like, a decent to-do list, but there was definitely more things that I could get done throughout that day. And a lot of times, a couple years ago, what I would do is I would kind of be a little bit over ambitious. I would try to have the perfect day. I'd set myself up for perfection rather than just trying to be good enough. And I would write down all of these different things that I thought I could do if I had the perfect day. And what that now turns into is the other side that's a little bit longer. So on this other side, what I do is I write down all of the things that I already wrote down on one side. So on the side that obviously everything I need to get done to not incur stress, I write all of those down again. And what I do is I add on things that will make me think that I had the perfect day. We all have those days here and there. You're just on one. You're just completely on one. You have no distractions. You aren't on your phone for, 30 minutes here and there, or even 10 minutes here and there. You're not getting distracted talking to colleagues or getting distracted, over lunch and maybe not working through lunch if you need to, everything like that. Or maybe going to bed early or staying up a little bit too late and watching a TV show rather than maybe getting through a little bit of work later on in the night. And I write out on the other side what I could do if I had the perfect day, because we have those here and there. And as I go through the day, what I'll do is I will focus on what is my right side, what is this side right here, the shorter side. And before I can do anything on the other side, I have to finish everything here within reason. Obviously, if there's a meeting at 5 p.m. that, I have everything else done but that meeting, I'm going to get some stuff done on the other side first as well. But I try and get done everything that I possibly can on what I call the consistently good side versus the occasionally great side. And once I get all of that stuff done, then I can move on if I need to, if I feel like I need to the occasionally great side and start tacking off some stuff that might, release stress from later in the week. And what this does is it allows me to understand what it feels like to be consistently good, what it feels like to do things that are good enough instead of just perfect. Because trying to strive towards that, very, very lofty, very, very, you know, kind of, I don't really know how to put it into words, but very, very unrealistic perfect day, every single day can get extremely discouraging. It can get extremely worrisome after a while because you start to get down on yourself. So being able to understand that perfect gets in the way of good enough, setting yourself up to just do what's good enough, and then being able to push beyond that is lesson number two. That's lesson number two that I kind of was able to bring into 2025 and be able to move forward from. Now, obviously, with that, I don't mean for you guys to just always strive for good enough. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you probably have very lofty goals and you understand that good enough sometimes isn't good enough. So being able to, obviously bring in some perspective and be able to understand what perfect and good enough means for you is very important. So this isn't a means for you to be complacent, but it's a means for you to give yourself maybe a little bit of grace here and there because we don't have perfect days every day. If we did, man, everything we would do would be extremely easy and then everybody would have everything they ever wanted, right? But that's not the case. Now, the third one is the one that I have really been attaching myself to over these past couple weeks. And it's this idea of killing your clone. Now, as I talked about earlier, 2024 was a tough year. I fell back into very, very bad habits that I, had previously gotten rid of. Things like hopping on my phone first thing in the morning, things like snoozing the alarm clock, things like really not getting into work when I should, or putting off writing training to times that, are obviously not optimal, and then rushing myself and maybe getting out a subpar product. And what I mean by killing your clone is this idea that to create something new, in yourself, you have to kill a part of yourself, 100%. And the thing that really made myself realize this is a post by a good friend of mine, Jake Engelke, who I'll actually have on the podcast here in the next couple weeks. Now, Jake is an amazing guy. I met him at the BPN Athlete Weekend. We roomed together at an Airbnb. He's a fantastic athlete, a fantastic person, a fantastic coach. Couldn't talk highly of him enough. But with that post that he made, he just had a simple quote on there. And that simple quote was, "Everything I ever wanted cost me everything I ever was." And that hit me. That hit me really, really hard because I had been striving towards something or trying to strive towards something in 2024 and not killing parts of me that were holding myself back. I was allowing those parts to continue to be a part of me. I was allowing myself to continue to snooze the alarm clock. I was allowing myself to continue to eat bad and obviously maybe not push myself in training how I should, or not take my rehabilitation well enough, or not, push myself as a coach as much as I should with continuing education. I was lazy. I was complacent. And I realized that to be able to achieve great things, to be able to achieve my goals, I had to kill those parts of myself. And it's a constant struggle. There are things that still come back up. For example, these past 2 weeks of me taking my comprehensive exams for my PhD, I realized that I was sleeping in again. And I, kind of gave myself some grace or thought to, but I became complacent. And I realized that, by the end of the week, I need to kill that part of myself again. I need to kill my clone. I need to look in the mirror and I need to kill that person. And obviously, I don't mean literally there. I mean, kill those aspects of myself and those habits that I don't love that obviously aren't making me achieve my goals. But I needed to understand that everything I wanted to be and to achieve everything that I want to be, I have to get rid of everything I ever was or everything that I'm doing right now that aren't pushing myself towards those goals. So those were the three things. Now, before I kind of move forward into concluding this episode, I did I did put on my story that I was taking some questions, and I've got two really really good ones here from two of my clients actually, one being from Dalton and one being from Dominic, and I wanted to obviously look at those and see if I could answer those questions on this podcast. And so Dalton asked me, what's the balance of having everything in a schedule versus not living by it all the time? So again, if you know me, and you've probably seen me post my Google Calendar here and there. If you know me, you know that I live by a Google Calendar. I love a Google Calendar. If it's not in the GCal, it's not happening. And that goes from everything from, reminding myself to eat lunch to, reminding myself to reach out to vendors or reach out to potential clients or write training or anything like that, or read or go to class, for fuck's sake. It's all of those things. And this is a really good question because if you structure your day like that, where everything is in a Google Calendar, it is really, really hard for you to have flexibility. And so what I do is very similar to what I do in the Little Black Book, very similar to what I do with my to-do list, is I put everything in my Google Calendar that is a necessity, that is an absolute necessity. And after doing that, I look at where I have some kind of gaps, maybe 2 and 3 hours here, 2 or 3 hours there. Obviously, I try and wake up and read from 6:30 to 8:30 most days as I was studying for my exams this week. And so after those 2 hours, I would normally have a gap. And that's where I would fill in stuff that maybe isn't a necessity, but things that I still need to get done, those kind of occasionally great tasks. So being able to understand that, yes, it's always nice to have, everything in your Google Calendar, but trying to live by it in that strict way is just not possible, in my opinion. It's very, very hard. And this is also a lesson that my fiance's dad taught me. We sat down and he talked to me about this because my fiance had told him that, I live by a Google Calendar, and he had told me, dude, you need to have some flexibility in there because you don't know what's gonna pop up. Now he's a business owner of a 7-figure company. And so he knows more than anybody how important that is, how important it is to have gaps in your day to be able to, shift focus towards something that might be a little bit more pertinent or a little bit more important in time, or just be able to take that time and maybe relax a little bit and again give yourself some grace. So that's kind of my answer to that question. That's how I kind of balance those things. And now the second question with Dominic is, how do you restructure your days, weeks when things just keep happening and piling up? And again, I'm going to go back to how I structure my to-do lists. And in doing so, when things start piling up, when things start getting really, really stressful, what I'll do is I'll kind of have this consistently good side become a little bit shorter, and I'll move things over to the other side that, might be a little bit a little bit less important. And so kind of triaging the necessities, right? Understanding what is the most important, maybe second most important, third most important, and putting those in and doing those day by day. But those fourth, fifth, sixth most important things, maybe shifting them over, trying to find times to do them outside of normal working hours. And, obviously being able to not incur stress on the next day so things just don't start to pile up. And so my answer to that question is being able to kind of have this forward thinking, backwards planning mindset where you look at your week, you look at your day from a goal setting perspective, from a goal setting mindset, where you say, oh, I need to do this, 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 and this first. And then looking at your calendar or looking at the time slots that you have to get that done and going, okay, I'm going to do this year, so on and so forth. Being able to backwards plan from that, much like a lot of people forwards think and backwards plan in warming up for a top set. I hate to make that analogy, but it's very similar. If you're warming up for a top set of squats and you're thinking, man, I'm going to take 220 or 496 for people that don't know kilos. I'm going to take 220 or 496 for my top set. Okay, what do I need to take as my last warm up? Okay, maybe I'll take 200 or 205 or 440, 455, somewhere in that range. Okay, what do I need to take before that? Okay, probably 3 reps or 170 or 374. Okay, it's that same thing. It's literally the same exact thing. It's being able to forward think towards your goal, backwards plan all the tasks that you need to do to achieve that goal. Okay, so if you've made it this far in my extremely rambly episode 20 of the podcast, I appreciate you. Before you go, I wanted to thank you. And if you had the opportunity to, I would love for you to leave a review if you enjoyed the episode. I'd love for you to give this a follow. That helps me grow the podcast, of course. I'd like to also thank, 110% as always. If you guys are interested in trying any of their pre-workout products or any of their supplements, I highly suggest doing so. I'll obviously have that linked in the description with code ROB, which will give you around 10% off at checkout. I know that they just recently restocked their sleep supplement and their focus supplement. Both of those are extremely great. I've ordered both already again, now that they are restocked. So those are things that I'll be using as I move into my dissertation work and as I move into, obviously trying to recover from training and a super big workload with the sleep products. And then lastly, as I move into March, I do have some spots open for coaching. I'll always plug that. If you are interested in that, please reach out via DM. Would love to talk to you. Or if you, just want to plug in the athlete inquiry or athlete application, I'll have that linked in the description as well. So you can just do that. But without that being said, I appreciate you guys, sitting with me through this one. I think I needed to get all of this out before, more than maybe a lot of you guys needed to hear it. Obviously being able to verbalize these things is extremely powerful, and hopefully some of you guys got something from this. So appreciate you. Hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend. And as always, continue climbing.